Good evening. My name is Amy. Thanks for having me here tonight. I am actually friends of some of the people that started Artistic Recovery 320. I'm married, 46-year-old, 25, same. And I have two boys, 19 and 14. I've struggled with alcoholism, overeating, and depression. However, that is not who I am. I am a devoted and grateful believer and follower of Jesus Christ, first and foremost. That is who I am. Forgiven, loved, and continuously pursued by my Father in heaven. I grew up in a small town in Indiana. I had divorced parents and lived with my mom and my stepfather. My dad, stepmom, and step siblings were in my life, mostly on the weekends. I was one of the middle kids. How many of you are the middle kid? Lots of, yeah, you all get it. I was very smart in school and a natural talent in sports, which I passed that right down along to my kids. They get all the talent from me. I love the attention and the acclamation that it brought me. There was dysfunction in my family, just like in every family. Things we didn't speak about. A sibling had a child at a very young age. There was favorite kids, sexual abuse, people in and out of my dad's house on the weekends like a rotating door. I felt very lost, overlooked, and unimportant to anybody. This is where I began searching for love, comfort, and security. We didn't attend church as kids. The most exposure I had was going every other weekend with my dad. There was no relationship with Jesus Christ. This was more of a genie in the bottle, when I need you attitude, only when I wanted something. I didn't understand who Jesus was, God, and the Holy Spirit. Around the age of 15, I started to drink with some friends, just the fun drinks that made me feel rebellious, relaxed, and included. One summer, my mom and stepdad caught my sister and I drinking in our bedroom. A big argument followed, and my sister and I decided to run away and go stay with an older sister, her boyfriend, and the two small kids, my nephews. After a week, my one sister went home, but I stayed. I was still very angry. One night I found a bottle of hard liquor and made the decision to drink as much as possible. I woke up under my nephew's toddler bed, not knowing how I got there. My sister had to call for an ambulance because I couldn't stop vomiting. I was taken to the hospital with alcohol poisoning at the age of 15. Between the ages of 15 and 20, I became an alcoholic. This started as fun, rebellious, exciting times. People liked me, and it made me feel good about myself, and very, very quickly turned into an addiction. I continued to drink. I obtained a fake ID and started buying alcohol for my friends. At the age of 18, there was a verbal altercation between my sister and I, resulting in my mom kicking me out of the house. This was not alcohol related, just family dysfunction. I was livid. I moved in with my best friend and her mom and started working 2 jobs to make payments on a vehicle. I was alone, I was strong, I can do this on my own. I saved up enough money to rent a house with another friend from high school. I was working 2 jobs and throwing parties on the weekends. I was receiving that attention again. People liked me. I was fun and I made people laugh. One night I took a friend's car and a few friends in the car with me, and we went to go get some food. This was after I had been drinking for hours. On our way home, I stopped at a stop sign. I was feeling on top of the world, having fun, didn't care what anyone thought. We were blaring music, my adrenaline kicked in. I gunned the gas pedal, not knowing how fast my friend's car really was. We started fishtailing, and I proceeded to hit the corner of a house. Thankfully, nobody was hurt in the house. Airbags went off, and the horn went off and was blaring. I panicked. I backed up and drove back to my house with my friends and pulled into the grass. Everyone was trying to figure out how to turn the horn off. It woke up the neighbors and the police were called. The alarm was shut off and we were questioned by the police. God's grace. By God's grace that night, and a cop who was my neighbor growing up, I was not arrested. I dealt with some legal issues, including one of my friends suing me, and my friends meant everything to me. They were all I had. However, God removed what and who was not good for me and replaced it with people to help me follow his will for me. I moved back home feeling very embarrassed, ashamed, a disappointment, lost, feeling very alone, and very depressed. And I know there's lots of you in this room feeling the same exact way today. That was it. I was done drinking. Never again. That was scary. However, I couldn't. I was powerless over the addiction and needed to be surrounded with people that liked me. The very next weekend, I vowed to lay low, and I went to a cousin's house and was starting to drink a little. Someone asked me to move my vehicle so they can get out, and I backed into another vehicle. Again, shame, embarrassment, depression, and feeling like a failure were all present again. I drank until I blacked out, and at times would wake up not knowing how I got there. I drove drunk and began drinking alone. I was a fun drunk around people, but the real me, Amy, the lonely person, I drank by myself. At the age of 20, I started having some health issues. While at work after eating a sandwich, I became violently ill, throwing up and not being able to breathe. I was taken to a hospital and was told it was a gallbladder attack, and we need to have my gallbladder removed in the near future. I was scheduled for a laparoscopic surgery, which is non-invasive, and they go right through your belly button, a week or two later. What was important at this time is one of my closest friends was getting married. There's big things in life going on, right? I needed to get the surgery done so I can get to the bachelorette party and also stand in her wedding, and I definitely was not going to miss that reception. This was an outpatient surgery, and I should be in and out in one day. Great. I do not remember the prep or even going in for surgery, but what I do remember is waking up and being in the worst pain and agony I have ever felt. I was on the gurney, being pushed back down the hallway to my room. My stepfather was standing right outside my room waiting for me, and I was screaming because of the pain. I don't remember much the first day or two because of the pain medication, but I was told that the hospital was pressuring my parents into taking me home. They were told I just had a low pain tolerance and had already been there for a few days longer than anybody else that had that type of surgery. I was taken home and told to follow up with the primary care physician. Once at home, I couldn't eat and could barely move. I remember sleeping in a rocking chair in my room and still being in pain. A few days later, a friend took me to my follow-up appointment. As soon as my primary care physician seen me, he told me to go directly to the ER. He said, "You are jaundiced." I had no idea what that meant. The whites of my eyes and my skin had turned yellow. My friend took me directly to the ER where I had had the surgery. The surgeon who did the original surgery spoke with my parents, and he assured them that he knew what the problem was and he could fix it. I went in for a second surgery, where this time I was cut open. I came out of that surgery and remained in that same hospital what seemed like forever. I was given a morphine pump because my pain was so unbearable. The moment I woke up, I pushed the pump. I was not allowed to eat or drink anything for a really long time, 2 weeks or longer, because my body could not digest anything. I had tubes coming out of my stomach for drainage and a tube down my throat into my stomach. There were a few times it felt like the bottom of the tube had stuck to something inside of me, cutting off my air supply, and I couldn't breathe. Nobody was in the room. This was beyond terrifying. I was alone and scared. I was trying so hard to get better for the parties coming up. I wasn't getting better. I remember my friends coming to visit and telling them I couldn't wait to get to the bachelorette party. They looked confused and said, "That was 2 days ago." I have no memories of those days. I was so upset that I had missed it. It was hard hearing all the fun they had had and the memories that they now share. But God said, "You aren't getting it yet." He didn't get my attention. After a long period at the hospital, a nurse pulled my parents aside and said if they don't get me out of the hospital, I would be dead. My parents immediately started on working, getting me transferred to the University of Chicago. While being loaded into the ambulance, I remember my mom standing there and telling her, that I loved her for the first time in my life. This was different. Our family loved each other. We just never said it. I was certain I wasn't going to survive that ambulance trip to Chicago. God started changing me while I was hurting and scared. When I arrived in Chicago, they needed to do a procedure to figure out what was going on. So they said they were going to sedate me. I was scared because I had been sedated so much over a month that I thought I wouldn't wake up. They explained that the procedure would be painful and again suggested to be sedated. I again refused. I was placed on a table on my back, and they began to remove the staples from my stomach from the previous surgery. They took a long metal rod with the camera at the end and put it through my open incision in my stomach and had to move it around to figure out what was going on. I was screaming and crying in so much pain. They had multiple people hold me to the table so they can finish the procedure. By the time it was over, I was physically and emotionally drained. As they pushed me into my new room, I saw my mom standing at the doorway and told her that they had hurt me. God used my pain and suffering for blessings later in life. At that time, I did not know. The damage from the original surgeon was so severe that they had to switch from a general surgeon to the chief transplant surgeon. This is the surgeon who does all the transplants, heart, lung, and every other transplant you can think of. I was scheduled for another surgery with him. I did not believe I would wake up or survive this third surgery. I was malnourished and barely hanging on. A day or two after surgery, early in the morning, I was woken by the doctor and his team, the best of the best. He told me that he had done the best that he could during the surgery, but that my bile ducts had been cut to shreds, and it was like sewing wet paper tissue to get back together. Bile had been leaking throughout my body and was eating away my organs. He said, "You have a 50-50 chance of it holding together. And if it doesn't hold, we're going to put you on a waiting list for a liver transplant." Then they all left the room. It could have been something completely different. It could have been diabetes, hearing loss. I could have lost a leg. How ironic it was my liver. I felt God saying, "I gave you a gift, your body. Take care of it." I was taking it for granted and realistically at this time could lose it. Fear, panic, regret, anger, shame, hopelessness, all set in immediately. How am I in my 20s possibly going to die? I have nothing to show for my life. I am a drunk, an embarrassment as a child, haven't accomplished anything, never been married, no kids, and on and on and on. It's like your life flashing before your eyes, but with everything negative and sinful you have done. I was alone in that room with no one, alone, scared, shaking, hopeless, and I felt the physical touch of God. He physically wrapped his arms around me, and everything I was feeling instantly went away. Everything. The embrace coming from something so holy and pure that it could erase everything. I felt a sense of calm and peace that I had never felt. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Philippians 4:7. I began my relationship with Jesus that day. Something changed in my soul in those moments. It was an immediate change, but also became a lifelong process and transformation. Every nurse, doctor, food worker, cleaner that came in my room, I thanked over and over and was grateful. I asked how their day was and engaged because I was happy to be alive, even though I could barely walk or breathe. I stared out my window and imagined the day I would get to go home and how I would change. I began bargaining with God. I promised to never touch a drop of alcohol again, to go to church every Sunday, and to live my life for him. Although I haven't made it to church every Sunday, don't judge me. I have not touched a drop of alcohol, and I try and live. And I try and live every day for him and his purpose. It's not easy, and it's definitely not pretty, and it doesn't always go my way. Most of the time, it does not go my way. Life didn't just miraculously become better and beautiful after that. A few years after surgery, I started to jaundice again. I went back to the University of Chicago and was told that the scar tissue was growing inside of my bile ducts, causing me to jaundice. They did a procedure to open my bile ducts. This procedure had to be done a few times in the next few years. However, each time I went for the procedure, I took my Bible. It was placed next to me on the table. I told them that I wanted to make sure he was in the room with us. They just smiled and accepted my request to keep the Bible in the room with me. After coming home, my mom was struggling with some issues and having a hard time getting out of bed. I was worried for her. I went and used her bathroom one morning and felt this nudge to write her a note. It was simple. God still has you here for a reason. We never talked about God or church. This was so outside my comfort zone. I was the only one in our immediate family feeling pulled towards God. I remember my older sister found the note and laughed at me. It made me feel very insignificant and alone, a lone soldier in my house. However, it didn't matter because I knew God, what he had done for me, he could also do for my mom. Fast forward years later, I got married and I have been blessed with 2 sons. God didn't care that I was broken, ashamed, and sinful. He chose to use me anyways. I began working for a church in children's ministry. I learned so much that I didn't know at a level that was so easy to understand. I was invited to an Experiencing God Bible study. I was reluctant to go because I wasn't up to the same experiences, knowledge as these other people. However, it didn't matter. I learned how God works and what we are to do with our time on this earth. The biggest one, this group began praying for my parents. I remember thinking at the time it was pointless. They are older, they're set in their ways, but we continued to pray for them. My stepfather received the news that he had cancer, and God began moving in the lives of my parents. The cancer, the pain and suffering, is what changed them. God met them right where they were, but most importantly, they accepted. They accepted. I remember receiving a call from my mom, and she said, "I get it now." God walked alongside of them through the darkness. My parents are now saved, fully invested in their church as leaders and volunteers, and share their testimony for others. Yeah. God didn't stop there. He snowballed this onto my sister, the one who made fun of my note 20 years ago. She has also been through pain and suffering, and it changed her. She has now turned to God and also share his word and his love with others. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. Psalms 34:18. You just have to accept. I have found the more I seek the Lord, the more he answers and makes himself known to me. I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. John 15:5-8. I have been sober 24 years. It will be 25 this year. Thank you. And that has only been by the grace, love, and guidance of God. Again, I have been blessed with a family with 2 sons who also know Jesus. I only choose to follow his lead and his will for me. However, I am far from perfect. I am still a sinner. I struggle with depression and other things that are always going to be a work in progress. Because of the Lord's great love, we are consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Lamentations 3:22 through 23. If there's something I would like you to take away tonight, it would be this: God is real. And God will and can change you if you allow him to. No matter what we are struggling with, addictions, mental illness, anything else you are facing, he will conquer them all of them. Our addictions, mental illnesses are not who we are. Speak up when it becomes too hard and the darkness is unbearable. You need to have safe people in your life. This place here, this is a safe place. These are safe people. You need to reach out. You need to surround yourselves with people that will listen but also hold you accountable. Stay proactive. When we feel depressed, call your doctor, the safe person, and keep them in the loop. Do not suffer alone. The hope is there. We are forgiven, loved, and you are not alone. God can and will remove those things and people that are not in line with his purpose for us, but he will replace them with things and people that are good. God speaks to us in all different ways. Be open not only to hear him, accept his forgiveness and grace, make the decision to accept him and follow his guidance. Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. If you need prayer tonight, I would be honored to pray with you and for you. And I just want to say thank you for allowing me to give my testimony.